Date point. 4th year. 8th month. AV. Classified facility. Planet Earth. Sol. Hugh Johnson. No, nothing like that. It's hard to say. It wasn't like a dream, or like being trapped. It wasn't like anything. I was just dead for a while, and somebody else was using my body, and when he was done with it, he brought me back. But not the same. And there was still a part of me alive. Kinda. Hugh trailed off, then shrugged helplessly. It was a very strange feeling to be treated as if he was a stranger by somebody he knew so well. But of course, Carl had spent months getting to know his passenger, rather than Hugh himself. You aren't making much sense, Carl told him. I know, I think... Hugh paused to think. That alone was a luxury he hadn't enjoyed for so very long, but he'd never been a man of many or eloquent words. He just didn't know how to go about describing experience without involvement, existence without awareness. The words to hint at what had been his life for the last several years just weren't in his vocabulary. He hit on an idea. The drone needs to act like a person, he explained, but Meat doesn't know how to. That part's all up to, like, you. The bit of you, that's yourself, you know. But that bit can't be in charge because if it was, you know, I'd have run into a hospital and begged them, get these damn things out of my head. That makes sense. Okay, so they hit the sweet spot where I wasn't in charge, but there was just enough of me sticking around for the body to pretend to be a real person, you know? They retained your instincts and knowledge of correct social behaviour while suppressing your capacity for agency and rational thought, Carl said. Hey, if you say so, I was never too good with words. You were vagrant before they did this to you? I was a bum, yeah, Hugh replied. Dropped out of school, hit the bottle, never looked up. All I cared about was the next 40, you know? I follow you. What did you do for cash? You name it. You know, sometimes I'd head out east, be a farmhand, ranching. Sometimes I'd do favours for people, like, my friend's moving house, can you help move her couch? That kind of shit, right? Sometimes I'd be a lookout if somebody was robbing someplace, or I'd scrounge up some food, boil up a stew and sell it on cold days up north. All sorts of things. Did a few years of petty theft, shoplifting, you know. Probably would have gone back in if the aliens hadn't got me first. How did that happen? I was down on the border, helping this guy I'd met for a friend. He was helping the Mexicans, you know. They'd pay him, he'd get them up here. They'd get in this van I was driving, and I'd get them up to LA. I figured it was a win-win, you know. If we managed it, I got my car to what they paid him. If not, then I'll be back inside. You wanted to go back to prison? Hell yeah. Too hot's in the cot, you know. Anyway, I was banging my ass off all over the desert in the middle of the night, driving this piece of shit transit, when the engine cut out on me. No, I mean, I know engines. Done some work fixing cars to get by in my time. I never had an engine just stopping me like that. It just went pop, and it was like I'd taken the key out. So I stopped, got out, had a look. I'm still staring at what looks like a pristine-ass engine, when somebody turned on the lights. I looked up and, well, that's all she wrote for me. Next time I was myself, again, would be today. Can you remember what the biodrome did? What Six did? Shit, Six was fine. He just wanted to get out and explore, you know? Find out what a burger tasted like, that kind of thing. But that other one, man. He ordered the drone to go kill that poor Boone lady, and I still remember that clear as day. Like he was ordering it to take out the goddamn trash. How did the biodrone escape the scene? The only footage we have shows it, standing there in one frame, and gone the next. What, you've not figured that part out yet? We have our suspicions. Like what? Carl cocked his head slightly, then said, carefully, personally, I think they have a spaceship on Earth. Hugh nodded. You're goddamn right they do. Date point. 4th year, 8th month, 1st week, 2nd day, AV. Council Station, orbiting planet capital. The assassin worked alone, always. Obviously, doing so increased some of the risks of his vocation, but it also reduced some others. The trade had, for a career of some 12 human years, worked out in his favour, albeit with some near misses. His existence was known among certain circles. His nature was not. A large part of his success came from the fact that a prejudiced galaxy looked at his species and saw only tiny, physically frail, opportunistic cows with big brains. Whenever the identity of the assassin was speculated upon, the usual assumptions were that he must be Cheshano, or maybe Local, or even Selassie. Not Courty. Never Courty. Courty were overlooked, or rather looked at in the wrong way. But a tiny, frail body was no limitation at all when you had access to Directorate technology. And so, one moment he was a medical technician. In the instant that nobody and nothing looked at him, a simple change of which tool he was holding and fiddling with turned him into an engineer, then a bureaucrat, or maybe a diplomatic aide. Never anybody important. Just another little grey body padding around the station corridors, engrossed in some task that was obviously much more important than whatever or whoever was around him. It was critical that, on this job in particular, he should go undetected. He had never been commissioned to silence a member of the Dominion Security Council before. There would undoubtedly be repercussions, which he was keen to avoid. The caution cost him time, as he made entirely sure that the timing was perfect, and that there was no possibility of anything going wrong. But time was a plentiful luxury. Finally, satisfied that his preparations were as comprehensive as was feasible, he put his plan into motion. It was not a difficult plan. While the elevator control systems on Council Station were as hack-proof as the very best minds in the Directorate could conceive, they still had a few loopholes. Nothing that might deliver him outside of his clearance level, but enough. The one he used was a simple maintenance cycle, an unscheduled degauss of the elevator's propulsion coils. That little trick earned him 12 seconds. 12 seconds in which, guided by an array of force fields dangling in their subtlety, complexity and finesse, the emergency exit hatch was unsealed, lifted out. He was lifted through, the hatch replaced and his seals re-engaged. He barely glanced at them. The spinal elevator shaft of the great station, the largest ever built, was its own hazard course, absolutely not intended for hospitality. The elevators were not bound to individual tracks, but switched constantly from one path to another, flashing past their peers with millimeter clearances, guided by a central routing system that handled thousands of such narrow-margin trajectories per day, and had done so for years with a callous disregard for the presence of anything within the transit shaft that did not belong there. Technology again came to his rescue. The constant weave and dance, and sometimes retreat, that kept the hurling cars from reducing him to a fine organic cloud of red vapour, impeded his progress, but it did deliver him safely to his destination, high on the outermost apex of one of the VIP habitation clusters. After that obstacle course, the door was child's play. The Councillor's personal suite was stunning. It was a garden of a dozen worlds, each a pleasing biome in a force-filled bottle, arranged both for aesthetic delight and ecological accuracy. Even the assassin was awed, granting himself a moment's pause to examine the delights on offer as he stalked through the suite, quietly impressed by the subtle way in which the apartment suite's necessities, luxuries and furniture were all hidden amongst the assorted alien foliage. Hello. The assassin spun. Twin plasma bolts, weapons that he could never have fired if not for his exoskeleton harness and his powerful tuning shields, would have reduced the target to a steaming mess had he actually been present. Instead, they shattered the blue haze around a display and immolated something like a tree, which made a distressed hooting sound as it deflated amid the flames. On their way, they had passed through a hologram of the target. I apologize for my absence, but I would prefer not to be murdered today, the apparition continued, nor on any other day, for that matter. I do apologize for killing you this way. I don't suppose it shall be very pleasant. Earnest contrition described a glowing puce stripe down his flank. The assassin looked wildly around, immediately on his guard. Was that the whine of hunter-killer drones? No, just the tree, keening its last. His chest felt tight, despite the absence of any apparent violence. No turrets unfolded from the floors. No armed Annabellin shock troopers stormed him. He coughed. Or tried to. The result was much more like a violent wheeze. Breathing really had become very difficult. He coughed again, and this time blood spurted from his nostrils, joining the thin trickle that had begun to stain the corners of his eyes. I wish I could send you alive back to your employers with a warning to leave me alone, but your reputation precedes you, you see. The holographic ghost of Councillor Vendrick continued. You are very well known for your tenacity and for seeing the job through, all of which left me feeling rather like I had no other choice. Ow! The assassin croaked, desperately querying the pseudo-sentient medical pack he carried for anything that resembled a solution. He didn't expect an answer from the hologram of his target, but he received one nonetheless. Whether Vendrick had thought to include it, or programmed a simple response sim, was unclear. The hardest and most dangerous part was in configuring the containment field to collapse in the same circumstances that triggered this recording, you see. One slip, and I would have finished as you are now. The assassin's black-edged vision settled on the one particular plant, right in the middle of the suite, that no longer had a field around it. Somehow he knew exactly which planet this specimen had come from. It's called a mountain cedar, if you're interested. It is quite possibly the deadliest plant in the galaxy. Humans apparently like the smell, but even they can suffer some quite severe allergic reactions to its pollen. I imagine it is a terrible way to go, but, well, I had nothing else to hand. I am sorry. The assassin was far beyond the capacity to answer. An hour later, in response to Vendrick's programming, the suite resurrected the containment field around the Terran plants and initiated a maximum threat biohazard cleanup protocol. Only after the gardens were absolutely guaranteed to be clean of every last pollen grain was station security finally alerted. Date point: 4th year, 8th month, 1st week, 4th day, AV. Freelance vessel Sanctuary. Julian, Esther City. I was caught in the middle of a railroad track. Thunder. There was a lot of welding to do. Julian had taken a couple of weeks learning the skill down on Earth, grateful to be home, enjoying the place. He wasn't sure what Kirk had been up to. Personable as he was, the Sanctuary's owner and master kept his secrets and, well, and was probably playing a game that he, Julian, didn't know the rules to. But he'd been there, ready to pick them up when San Diego had died. I looked around, and I knew there was no turning back. Thunder. Sanctuary had changed too. A lot of Kirk's old passengers were back on board. People who had returned to Earth, learned how to be human again, and then, well, felt the call. Fitter, better fed, and harder one and all, and more driven. They'd taken on guns and ammo, filled the jump array with floor mats for physical training and martial arts when it wasn't in use. Some uniforms had come aboard, taken a look around, and left only after leaving an extensive list of recommended modifications. Hence the welding. By the time they were done, the ship would be less elegant, but much sturdier. My mind raced, and I thought, what could I do? Thunder. And I knew there was no help from you. Thunder. Between the deafening music and his welding mask, he neither saw nor heard the workshop door open, and he was so focused on getting the weld right that he didn't feel the gravity automatically adjust itself to galactic standard. He damn near jumped out of his skin when he was tapped on the shoulder. Sound of the drums beating in my heart. Kirk waved expressively at him with his two smaller arms, clamping the larger ones over his ears and shouting, though unable to summon the volume to compete with Angus Young. Julian tried to order the room to turn the music off, but apparently it couldn't hear him either. He fished in his pocket for the remote control he'd built. The thunder of guns tore me apart. You've been. What's up? He asked, as Kirk relaxed in the silence. That can't be good for your hearing. It's a classic. Kirk issued a strange sort of whickering sound, the version of a derisive snort. Julian, classic would be Vivaldi or Sibelius. That's classic Cal. What's up, anyway? I was just asking you to turn it down. I could hear it all the way from the flight deck. Ah, Julian grimaced. He was still adjusting to having other people around him after years of isolation, and loud music was a luxury he'd gone without for too long. Sorry. Yeah, but I was enjoying it. The new voice belonged to Allison. While an entertainment binge on Earth, and getting laid several times had largely cured Julian of his awkwardness around women, it threatened to come surging back whenever she entered the room. It's good workout music, she explained, as Kirk turned his ungainly, lanky frame to face her. Julian Esther City, Wilderness Master and a 6-year survivor of the deadliest planet in the known galaxy, awkwardly cleared his throat and turned his attention back to the bulkhead reinforcement he had been welding, because the alternative was to be distracted by the enticing way Allison's sweat was making her sport shirt adhere to her skin and soaking her blonde ponytail. Focusing on that turned out to be even harder when she poked her head over his shoulder, radiating heat and a clean physical scent. "Good world." "Thanks," he commented, for lack of something better to say. "I didn't know you knew welding." "I don't," she murmured, straight in his ear, and then headed back through to the gym, glancing back to make sure he was admiring the yoga pants' enhanced view. "Jeez," Julian muttered, wiping his forehead, then followed it with, "Oh, shut up." This was in response to Kirk making an amused noise. "What?" the alien asked, innocently. He leaned in closer to inspect the world himself. "Go ahead and say it." Kirk shook his mane. "No thanks. I watch too much TV to fall into that cliched old trope. Alien comments on human romance and sexuality? Not I." He bared his teeth in a poor imitation of a smile. "I'm still allowed to find it funny, though." Julian picked up the welder, and after both he and Kirk had protected their eyes, resumed his work. "I'm not going for it." "Oh?" "She'll say no. I know why she's doing this. She likes to be looked at. She likes the power of lust. The second she puts out, we're not playing that game no more. And she knows I'm the easiest mark on this ship." "I see." "Sure you do." "I do. You're no idiot, Julian. You're one of the toughest and most resourceful people I know. If I were in your position, I'd resent being manipulated like that." "Yeah." Julian didn't admit to just how accurate Kirk's candid appraisal really was. "Makes me feel like a dumbass, though. Bomb fruit? No problem. Mangrove plants? Fall them back for 3 days straight with a machete and fire. Hellbirds? Ate them for lunch. I even killed a Minizilla once. Cool, calm and sensible the whole time. Show me a nice ass, though, and suddenly I'm a school kid again." "It is an exceptional ass, though," Kirk said, finally drawing a laugh from him. "How would you know?" he chuckled. "She's got a third as many legs as you're attracted to." "Oh, I can still be an academic expert on the subject," Kirk said. "Speaking as an anthropologist." Julian grunted and raised his mask to examine his handiwork. "Hey, 4 more of those and we'll be able to put the pressure door in." "I still don't see why you all insisted on them," Kirk grumbled. "What's the point in having inertial pressure control force fields if we rely on thick steel isols instead?" "What's the failure point in that giant power core you've got back there? What happens when the power goes? What happens if we get EMP'd? I'm less interested in keeping the ship pretty than keeping air in my lungs." Kirk waved an irritable forelimb. Yes, we've gone over all those arguments," he groused. "I swear, your species is paranoid." Julian just raised an eyebrow at him. "Deathworlders." "Right. Yes. Where are we going, anyway?" "Isbrook." "Again?" Julian put his welding torch down. "I thought they were pretty clear about not wanting to see any more humans ever again after the bank robberies, the murders, and the Exos massacre." "Not Urbis. Isbrook," Kirk said, as if that clarified things. "It's a city on Uxbrook." Julian pinched the bridge on his nose. "Kirk," he began to complain. Kirk snorted, a proper nostril-flapping equine snort. "As I recall, your home nation contains New York State, which is not to be confused with New York City, or Newark," he pointed out. Julian paused. "Yeah, okay, so this... Well done. It's a planet? A barren one, yes, but the richest source of rare earth elements in domain space." "So what's there beside mines?" "Weaker sensors, a small garrison, lighter security, and a population of underpaid, hard-working civilians with an insatiable appetite for entertainment which their employees don't provide." Julian nodded his understanding. "So it's a black market hub?" "Nearly as much so as perfection," Kirk agreed. "And less well known, which makes it an attractive route for smuggling the especially sensitive goods. But that's not why we're going there." "Do tell." "An old and dear friend of mine asked me to meet him there." Date point: 4th year, 8th month, 2nd week, AV. Fogfa, planet Simbream, the far reaches. Avarios. Alright, looks like that's our time for today. Lessons were a simple affair. It was very different to school as Ava knew the term. There being only a small handful of children and teenagers, there was no point segregating everybody by age, or even in holding formal classes. It was more like dedicated study time, with their teacher, Miss Olmsted, not giving a lesson, but instead flitting from student to student, by turns helping with basic addition, biology, simple reading comprehension, physics, geometry, tying shoes, and gently reminding the older ones to refocus on their work. As much as it suited her, Ava still felt that same relief and freedom when the end of lessons for the day came around. As pleasant, personal and liberated as Falkford's school might be, It was still school, and that meant not getting to enjoy the colony's perfect spring weather. Sarah was bouncing by her desk before Ava and Adam had even finished packing up. Ava rolled her eyes, suppressing a smile. "Do I get to know what the surprise is now, Sarah?" she asked. Sarah had not been so much hinting at her surprise as outright mentioning it at every opportunity for 3 days. "Mum and Dad said I can drive the mule this week," Sarah exploded, bouncing on her toes. "Kieran, Jack, Lizzie and I were going to go down to the lake and go swimming. It's really cool down there. The water's so clear. You can see the crashed spaceships from the bottom. You want to come?" It sounded amazing. Ava had been on the swim team in her high school, and she realised how much she missed it. "That sounds great. If only I had a swimsuit." This seemed to nonplus Sarah. "What do you need a swimsuit for?" she asked. Sarah, what else would I wear?" "You don't need to wear anything when you're swimming. What's the point? You just have to bring wet clothes home." "So, you're going to be swimming with Jack and Kieran and Lizzie?" "Yeah." "Naked? So?" "Sarah, that's weird." She regretted saying it the second she did, but regretted it even more the second it registered in Sarah's brain. The younger girl looked like she'd been slapped. "That's not weird," she snapped, eyes going red and watery. "You're being weird making such a big deal of it." She spun and effected a perfect, flouncing exit. "Sarah," Ava called after her, but to no avail. She turned to Adam. "That's weird, right? Swimming naked together is weird." "Well, Adam didn't get any further than that before being interrupted by a giggle from Jessica Olmsted. "That was what pretty much everyone else thought the first time," she said. "But it's innocent. She really doesn't see why people have a problem with it." "How can she not?" Ava asked. Jessica giggled again. "I love Sarah's parents, but it's a miracle that girl didn't end up being called Nebula Moondance or something," she said. "She got off lucky just being called Sarah Honeydew." Judging from her expectant smile, there was a joke there, which went straight over Ava's head, and Adam's too, judging from his expression. Jessica laughed softly and shook her head at their blank faces. "Let's just say they're uninhibited," she said. "Yes, it makes the rest of us a bit uncomfortable sometimes, but we discussed it at the thing, and the consensus was, so long as it's harmless." "Skinny dipping always sounded like fun to me," Adam said. "Adam!" Ava protested. "What? I'm just saying, if it's just good fun, maybe we shouldn't be so..." He stopped himself. "I mean..." "So what, Adam?" Maeve demanded. Unnoticed, Jessica grimaced to herself and slipped away. "Shouldn't be so what?" "I was going to say uptight about it," he confessed. That hurt, and it made her mad too. She poked him in the chest. "You just want to see the other girls naked," she accused, hitting on the first thing that came to mind to hurt him back. He backed off a step, rubbing where she prodded him. "What? Ava, they're kids, don't be weird." "You're being weird." "I'm just saying it sounds like fun." She snarled a disgusted noise, spun and walked away from him. "Whatever. Go into Daddy for advice, like always." He shouted after her. "What the hell's my dad got to do with anything?" She paused at the door, just long enough to yell, "At least you still have one!" and then slammed it behind her, storming off into the forest, away from anyone and everyone. She paused when she was certain he wasn't following, and leaned against a tree, arms folded over her tummy. The alien bark was smooth and cracked softly as she slid down, until she was sitting in a little ball among the roots, wrapped up in being equally angry at Adam, herself, and the universe, and cried. Date point: 4th year, 8th month, 2nd week, AV. Flogfer, Supreme Colony. Captain Owen Powell. "I don't fucking care if they are small. This is a military base, and that means the kids stay out of it. Or are you too fucking incompetent to do your job as a fucking sentry?" The soldier he was chewing out knew better than to respond, and just stood and took it. He earned points for that at least. Powell called down slightly. "Have you got an explanation for me, Corporal?" "Sir, 3 of them distracted me while the 4th snuck past behind me. I take full responsibility." "Noted and accepted. We're short-handed since the recall. There's reason to be extra vigilant. Am I clear?" "Yes, Captain. You're fucking right I am. This is a serious incident, which means it's getting written up. But that's all I can be asked to do this time. See to it that there isn't a next time. Dismissed." The man saluted and left, clearly relieved. As he left, he was replaced by Lieutenant Ross. Since the colony had been handed over formally to the British government, The Americans, Canadians, Aussies, and other Allied soldiers had all been recalled, replaced with a platoon from the British Army. They were good lads, but universally young and inexperienced, and there weren't quite enough of them. Most of the special forces had also been recalled, leaving only Powell and his hand-picked squad, including Legsy and Ross. "Found the ankle biters yet?" he asked. "Yes, sir," they owned up. "There's only 4 kids in town then, that age range anyway. I want to work with them, and their parents." "The weekly thing's tomorrow, sir," Ross pointed out. "Raising it there might get the message across better." "Aye, good shout. What's the news?" Ross handed over some packages. "Dispatches and your comfort package, sit rep on the San Diego investigation, and strategic report on nerve jam weaponry." "Lovely. Summarize that one for me," Powell said, accepting the rest of his mail. Ross nodded and flipped through the file, mumbling slightly to himself as he skimmed through to the summary. Extensive testing, thing conclusive, remain... At this point, the operating principles of this weapon system remain unknown and impossible to duplicate with Terran technology. Absence of token resistance only, given the above, development of effective protection has not been accomplished, with even total sensory isolation from the effect offering no more than a reduction in its effectiveness. Accurate cerebral hemorrhage, well, okay. While the weapon's effects are highly lethal with their maximum effect, probable long-term consequences of nerve jam trauma includes an increased stochastic probability of long-term complications including schizophrenia, paranoid delusions, dissociative identity disorder, motor nerve palsy, epilepsy and stroke. "Jesus fucking Christ," Powell muttered. Ross cleared his throat. At present, the only viable countermeasure to this weaponry, in a tactical situation, is destruction of the grenade if possible, and prioritizing the termination of any hostile unit which appears to be deploying them. Engage at long range only. "Nothing we couldn't figure out for ourselves, then," Powell commented. "Fucking useful, that." "Yes, sir." The captain sighed. "Alright. Spread that tactical advice to the lads, along with the news about there being no protection for the bloody things. Don't include the bit about the long-term complications." "Anything else, sir?" Ross asked, indicating the dispatches. "Now to act on. Today's Tuesday?" "Yes, sir. Militia training today. Both those kids from San Diego signed up. Our new police chief's boy and his missus." "Good. Those two look young and fit. And Arias says his lad knows his way around a pistol at least. And if the boy's going into civilian policing, we're going to want him to know how to fight." "Think you might swing by later to inspect the training, sir?" "I think I just might. Watching Legsy in teacher mode is always good for a fucking laugh." Date point. 4th year, 8th month, 2nd week, AV. Series base, Sol. Drew Cavendish. "And I'm telling you, you're bloody paranoid, mate." Drew. Cavendish was a picture of Zen calm, but he was slowly starting to lose his cool with his friend. "Have you seen the figures?" "We always knew this was going to be a dangerous job, Cavo." "And I'm asking you, mate, have you seen the figures? Did you actually look at them?" Drew Martin nodded. "Of course I bloody did. I know I'll layer it up, mate, but if my site leader hands me a report marked important and fucking safety incident statistics, then I fucking read it, cover to cover, twice." "Good. Then you could read this one too." Drew handed it over. Technically, Sirius Base was a completely digital office because ink and paper were expensive to bring up from Earth, whereas between the nuclear reactor and the solar collection fields, electrons were all but free. He'd paid for the hard copy version of the report out of his own pocket, wanting to make a statement. Nothing got the point across quite like physically handing over a 2-inch manila folder. "The fuck is this?" Drew asked, dropping it on his desk and opening it. "Every significant, serious and critical incident report for the whole of Sirius Base since the launch of Hephaestus 1, Cavendish told him. "Everything from the dodgy landing of the IBMS module and the relocation of the CHM, the suit HDF emitter problems, the airlock seals blowing, the collector array hiccups, that goddamn mess in the refinery, right up to the power surge down in the canteen this morning." As Martin opened the folder and started reading down the summary sheets at the front, he added, "I've also got personal testimonies, including one from Dr. Gunawardena, saying that in his considered medical opinion, the only reason we've not had any deaths yet is divine intervention." "I'll put it down to good engineering," Drew muttered as he read. "You and me both, mate. If everything around here wasn't triple redundant, backed up, safety checked, and reinforced to hell and gone..." Drew M. flipped the sheet over and muttered, "Strofe," upon seeing 6 more pages of summaries waiting for him, in Tennessee Patch 10-point Times New Roman. Shit. Is there anything that hasn't gone wrong up here? The IBM Z-series mainframes, Cavendish said promptly. They're the notable exception. If you don't count their module landing wrong in the first place, the IBM labs and data center are the only things that haven't suffered failures at or near the maximum projections. So wait, all this is in range? It's worst case scenario stuff, but... Cavendish sighed through his teeth and turned his head away. Okay, admittedly, yes. It's on the extremely pessimistic end of our protected range, but it's still in range. Barely. If it's in range... Don't say it, Drew. I'm not paranoid, I'm telling you. I think we have a saboteur on board. If we do, he's a drongo. Who sabotages the place while being careful not to peek outside of what we prepared for? Cavo, mate. Face it. You were just expecting things to go better. I was, Drew admitted, because it should be. Drew M fished in his pocket and aimed a green laser dot at one of the many documentaries tacked to his office wall. It should be inside that range, he emphasized, and it is. Barely. And we should be improving as we put things into place. We should be seeing patterns that we can compensate for. Instead, it's bloody everything. Anything can go wrong. Bloody right, mate. Murphy in action. Cavendish sighed. You're going to say I'm paranoid again, aren't you? Yeah, nah. I'm taking this seriously, Cavo. My right hand got on that. We all are. But we can't jump straight to sabotage. Well, I hope it's not. Or if it is, that I talk you around before somebody dies. He stuck out a hand. Drew M grabbed it, hoisted himself upright, and slapped his spare arm around his shoulders in a brief, masculine hug. Come on, mate. Let's hit the speakeasy, he said.